Acadia is seeing about a 65% decline in international applications, and that represents about a 50% decline in actual enrollments. This is a significant impact at Acadia, where our revenue growth strategy was really predicated on international student registrations.
Or just looking further afield than just what's in front of us. I think we're all concerned about who is that student, how are they coming, what is the geopolitics situation, do we recruit from a particular diaspora?
That has quite a significant budget impact, and we're seeing a drop about, I don't know, maybe 50% in applications for next fall as well.
Hey administrators, are you feeling the crunch with declining enrollments? It's time to innovate and rethink how we generate revenue. Join me at our upcoming conference panel, The Real-World Impact of Finances and Opportunities for Alternative Revenue Generation. Together, we'll dive deep into the challenges and opportunities ahead. First off, let's talk international students. We've all noticed the dip, right? So, what's your take on the trends this fall? Next, it's time to assess our financial health. Are you in the red or the black? Knowing where we stand is crucial. If we're facing a deficit, don't worry. We'll discuss strategies to overcome this and boost our financial stability. What's your institution doing to tackle this issue? Now, let's explore public-private partnerships, or P3s. Do you think they're a viable solution to enhance our finances? Let's weigh the pros and cons together. Striking the right balance in P3s is key, between risk, control, and returns. How is your institution managing this balance? Finally, we need to identify critical areas for partnership. Whether it's housing, food services, security, or construction, what's your institution prioritizing? You'll hear insights from our esteemed panelists, Scott Johnston, Gabriel Cormier, Christian Colum, Ian Murray, Charlie Simpkins, and Fran Wdowczyk. Don't miss this chance to learn, share, and innovate. Let's turn challenges into opportunities and drive our institutions forward. See you there.
Scott Johnston is the Associate Dean, the Office of Dean of Students at Victoria University and the University of Toronto. Scott is the moderator. Scott, if you want to come on and say a couple words about yourself.
Yeah, hello, good morning. As mentioned, I am the Associate Dean of Victoria University and the University of Toronto. So we're a smaller institution within the larger institutions. We have around 4,000 students with just over 800 in residence, and really excited to be on the moderator on the panel today and excited to hear about the rest of the talk. Can I start? Yeah. So
Gabriel Cormier, VP Admin and Human Resources, University of Moncton.
Hi everyone. Just like you mentioned, I'm the VP Admin HR. I have a background actually in electrical engineering. And Moncton's a smaller university. We have 5,500 students on the east coast of Canada.
Christian is not on yet. We'll go to Ian Murray, Executive Advisor, Strategic Initiatives, Acadia University.
Morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Acadia is a small university on the east coast of Canada in Nova Scotia in the beautiful Annapolis Valley. We are very small at about 3,800 students, an independent freestanding institution in Nova Scotia at about 185 years old.
Charlie Simpkins at University of Windsor.
Hello, bonjour. Charlie Simpkins, Director in the Office of the Vice President, Finance and Operations, responsible for the university's commercial initiatives, which includes real estate and development.
And Fran Wdowczyk, Director, University of Toronto, Scarborough.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm at the University of Toronto's Scarborough campus and the Director of Business Development, which includes ancillaries like the bookstore, the print shop, conference housing in the summer, food services, and all those little things that the university is eager to use to help offset some of that international student loss that, even though the U of T is managing it well, we do need to look for other opportunities. So excited to have this conversation today.
All right, with that, there is much happening on a global scale with post-secondary higher education around the world, and this is a very timely topic. Canada is certainly in the news globally as well. We're going to make this engaging and exciting, find out what's happening. We're going to turn this over to Scott, who's going to lead this discussion. I'll interject periodically with any questions that we may get. Scott Johnston, University of Toronto.
Thank you. So, obvious question. There's been a growing discussion around the number and role of international students in Canada. From your perspective, what's the reality versus the perception, and how is this affecting your institution's financial planning? So we're witnessing kind of a noticeable decrease in the number of international students, which presents an opportunity for us to innovate our approach. What have you observed from your institution's international enrollment this fall?
Is this a free for all or?
Yeah, how do you want us to jump in?
So I'll start. I guess we've got last fall we had a 28% drop in new international students. So that has quite a significant budget impact, and we're seeing a drop about, I don't know, maybe 50% in applications for next fall as well. So I mean, the quality of applications has certainly gone up since we have deposits now. Students can't apply to willy-nilly any university because they need provincial letters. But it does have quite a bit of an impact. We have 3 campuses, and 2 of our northern campuses are heavily reliant on international students, and they're going to have a big budget crunch next year and probably the year after that. So it certainly has a big impact.
I can jump in too, Scott. So the previous speaker noted that U of T, we manage these things a little bit differently, but nonetheless on the tri-campus level or just looking further afield than just what's in front of us, I think we're all concerned about who is that student, how are they coming, what is the geopolitics situation, do we recruit from a particular diaspora, and is that something we need to start rethinking before it comes beyond? So we are working hard to maintain our numbers and the quality of that student at the U of T. And we're seeing a lot of interest, perhaps more than ever, from the United States all of a sudden as well. So I think that's something else we're looking at and playing with. But I think the important thing isn't just like now, it's like a little further afield, because these students, we're talking to them younger, we're headed over inside of high school programs to educate them on what it means to come to Canada, are there language issues and that type of thing. So I do think it is a little bit business as usual, but on a little hyper mode for what we don't even know is on the horizon for us. So still a lot of unknowns on this one.
I'm happy to speak. Yeah.
Charlie.
Yeah, so University of Windsor is in the same situation, a pretty significant decline in international enrollment, international applications, which is forcing us to think about other ways to make up that revenue shortfall, especially in a budget deficit year and a projected probably couple of budget deficit years. There was a really interesting article this morning in the Toronto Star that quoted data from the Ontario University Application Center that suggested that that universities in Ontario at least are seeing an 8.4% decrease in undergraduate applications, driven almost primarily by international students. So you're seeing this across the board, not just the folks that are sitting on this panel, but probably all Ontario universities. And like Fran had mentioned, we're actually seeing an increase in interest from United States students, and us being close to, in fact, right on the border with Detroit, Michigan, we're expecting to see a pretty significant uptick in United States or American students. And like Fran also sort of alluded to, we're focusing our recruitment efforts in other areas of the world that we might not have focused in the past. We may not see the fruits of that labor this year, but we'll probably start to see it over the course of the next couple of years.
Is it, what are you expecting to be kind of the impact of the Trump now back in office and seeing a rise in those international students? Any speculation in terms of what that could look like in the near term, in terms of numbers, or still too early to say?
Let me just jump in there. It's Ian here at Acadia. I'm on my phone, so I'm not able to see all the panelists because we had some technical issues. But I wanted to just echo what the other speakers were saying, in that Acadia is seeing about a 65% decline in international applications, and that represents about a 50% decline in actual enrollments. This is a significant impact at Acadia, where our revenue growth strategy was really predicated on international student registrations. This, of course, was leading into and up through the pandemic, and then following with the cap that's come along. So the truncation of international students, combined with declining rates of public infrastructure, investment through the provincial government, tuition caps on domestic students is sort of the perfect storm for all of us, and not least of which a small school like Acadia that has limited ability to respond to those realities. However, that being the case, we do see strong growth on the domestic students. About 50% of our students do come from Nova Scotia, about 35 or 40% from other parts of Canada. I believe Fran has a niece at Acadia now, unless she's graduated. So we're grateful for those who come from Ontario and all points west of Nova Scotia to join us for our unique East Coast experience of a small school experience. With respect to the geopolitical situation, we aren't yet seeing international students who may have been contemplating the United States looking to us, and we don't expect that to really be the case. We are off the mainstream market in Canada, so we would imagine those students would be looking at other larger institutions with the international brands, and likewise not yet seeing American students choosing to come north, at least not into our jurisdiction as a result of what's happening in the United States.
Perfect. Wow, I think that's a great picture so far in terms of the climate and upcoming changes. Obviously, there's a growing concern about financial sustainability and institutional survival in the sector, especially looking at some of the colleges as well. What does sustainability look like at your institution right now? And how are you balancing ambition and long-term viability with kind of the immediate horizon?
Yeah, maybe I'll just speak to that really quickly, Scott. From our perspective here, one of the things that we're trying to do at Acadia is really understand how we can have social impact through our growth and development. So we understand that ultimately we're an educational institution. We're trying to honor our traditional approach to education from a liberal arts perspective, but understanding that the market is moving away from that in some ways. And certainly our partner in the provincial government, our funder, is looking to us for workforce development. I note the change in language from education to training, which is it's not an insignificant difference for a small traditional liberal arts college like Acadia. However, we are trying to understand what that means for us and how we can preserve things that we value moving forward in a more contemporary way. But in terms of sustainability, obviously enrollment is king. But we are looking at opportunities to develop it through partnership with provincial government or private developers, assets that would be valuable to the community. So we're looking at collaborative care, we're looking at childcare, and we're looking at long-term care. So we feel that those things, we have the capacity and the space on our campus to help developers or province build those things out. But we also feel that they dovetail very nicely with our academic offering. So we think if we can bring value to the community, help build community, and offer the supports that a growing community needs, it'll be a win all the way around for everyone.
Scott, we had a question come in about domestic Canadian enrollment. Has there been an increase in students from Canada looking to attend higher education in the past 6 to 12 months? That's the question. Domestic Canadian enrollment, what are you saying specifically within Canada?
I can jump in on our side. We've had an increase in the last 2 years, mostly from permanent residents. So it's new Canadians or children of new Canadians. That's where our growth has been in the last 2 years. It doesn't really offset all the loss of international students, but we have seen some growth on that side. I should have mentioned at the beginning, we are a Francophone university, so our market is slightly different. We recruit internationally in French-speaking Africa mostly. So our new immigrant base here are permanent residents that come mostly from French speaking countries, but it's a very different demographic than what we're used to. But that's been in the last 2 years roughly.
Yeah, I can jump in and speak to, again, the article that was in the Toronto Star this morning suggests that Ontario university applications are up 5% this year, which is significant. We had a sort of a peak around the double cohort year in 2003, and then sort of steady or declining sort of year over year. Now we're back up again, and I think they're expecting that to continue. And we've certainly seen an increase in applications, which is great if you have occupancy backstops in your student housing, because you have more domestic students looking for somewhere to live. So, it doesn't necessarily help the housing, crunch, but for universities that have, housing capacity, it's a good story for us. And obviously the enrollment benefits that come with increased applications.
Yeah, and I'll just dovetail onto what Charlie was saying there. We too have seen an increase in domestic enrollment, but to couple onto what Ian was saying earlier, it actually also has a lot to do with the type of program we're seeing enrollment increase into as well. So there are definitely opportunities that you can see the population itself is more interested in, regardless of what the government would like us to report or what the stat is or how you need to put that in for graduating rates or employment rates after the fact. There are definitely interest in the healthcare field, in the many of the sciences, for sure, hard sciences, anything to do with that world of research and results, computing sciences and management and economics, right? So the whole finance world is also blowing up along with the computer world and the medicine world. Doesn't leave a lot left in the humanities though, inside of revisiting what do those humanists and the sciences of that level, what are they providing? And we're getting creative, right? Getting creative with the film science, the film people and the English people coupling together to work with other areas in order to provide environmental sciences that work with film and English. It's a really turning into a wonderful time to revisit what you're putting forward so it has the academic integrity required at the institution and allows for those things to grow and challenge our students while meeting an interest. You kind of don't want to put the cart before the horse on this one, but you have to respond to what people want to study and then and what's that available for them at the end of the day. So I think it's really great times inside of what's happening on the academic side. I'm sure there are many people in other offices who wouldn't agree with that, because it's challenging to rethink some things that we've been doing for a very long time. But it's exciting for the innovation and what that will bring with the domestic student that we desperately all want. I also want to note that in the US for many years too, we've been hearing about the cliff coming in 2026. And is there an enrollment cliff? Is that particular age group coming along? And so to have our domestic numbers go up is kind of a fun little like, wow, okay, we too were expecting a little bit of a drop, not a cliff, but perhaps a little bit of a drop. And that's just not materializing in the same way. And then finally, I guess we're in speculation too, with everything going on with tariffs and job loss in particular industries. Will there be a retraining world once again? Many of us around the table look like we've probably lived through the last time we were all looking at what retraining, maybe not Charlie, you're looking pretty young over there. What will that produce for us for other opportunities and for our college colleagues as well, who desperately need some of that boost too. So lots of thoughts there.
That's a little bit better. Yep.
So Ian, you were talking about P3s, so public-private partnerships as a financial tool. I want to throw it out to the rest of the panel. Are you engaging with P3s? What's your stance, and where are the opportunities?
I can probably start for on behalf of the University of Windsor. We have to do P3s. We don't have the internal capital to fund capital projects, especially student housing. We aren't experts in construction. Universities for a long time, and still to a large extent do their own construction. We have to reserve our internal, operating budget and to the extent that we have at a capital budget, for academic-driven projects, not necessarily ancillary-driven projects. And so, especially when it comes to student housing, and we've already done one P3 deal. We're in the process of working on another one. We're exploring other opportunities for student housing, private-public partnerships. And we're actually starting to look at some P3s for commercial type initiatives. So excess land that we have that can't be used for academic purposes. We've identified them as excess lands, but happen to be in very strategic locations. You know, we aren't by nature property developers, commercial development, developers. We're not funded by REITs or pension funds or anything of that nature. We need access to capital. We need access to expertise, and public-private partnerships are the mechanism for us to do that. And so we've dipped our toe into the water. We've been pretty successful in the ones that we've already undertaken, and we're looking to do more.
I can jump in. I have
We had another, Scott, another question come in. The question is this: what do the panelists think about the upcoming federal election and the impact on financing for housing, for university and housing planning? So I'll repeat that. What is the view of the upcoming election and potential impact on university university and housing planning?
I can go, I guess, but housing, I mean, housing is definitely an election issue. So if there are funds for housing, I think student housing fits in that. We've had a housing crunch in Moncton the last few years, quite a bit of development lately. But if we can build more student housing, that frees up some space in the community. So any funds that are available, we're in the same situation as Charlie. I mean, we don't have the capital to fund all those projects. We need partnerships, whether it's private or nonprofit or something similar. So if there are funds for infrastructure, I'll say largely if there's funds for infrastructure, so student housing can definitely be a part of that, I think, and I hope.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think that at the University of Toronto in Scarborough, because all U of T, while we are one, we are three, as some of you others who, I don't know how the other systems work, Gabriel, how your campuses are, and then we've got our friends in the federated colleges, so we're all over the place financially that way. But P3s are definitely something to be responsible with inside of the funds that you do have. And so if you're going to put them towards your academic mission, or you're going to put them towards student housing, it's always a very large conversation to have, because you want to make sure that you're not boxing yourself out of something else, right? And so we too struggle with mortgage room and capital, but I love the fact that we're all talking about, we just don't have that expertise. Like we really do. We're very good at running the student life portion of it, like the previous person had mentioned in the keynote there. You know, we're really good at, we need an image, we need all of that to happen, we want all of that, and we have a vision for it that fits our campus. But to actually always be building takes a lot of resource, and we are building a fair bit at the University of Toronto Scarborough right now. So there's the opportunity to do that, but not every building should be built that way. An academic classroom building, very easy, very simple. A lab building, perhaps more complex, needs something different. Student housing, totally different kettle of fish. So I do think P3s are something we're always looking for, we're always interested in. It's got to be the right fit, though. I think this is the thing about P3s you want to be careful about. We're all listening for and trying to figure out who do you make that partnership with. Risk to reputation. You know, you want to fill beds, you want to fill it on this end, but you want to make sure you do it with a partner who is actually on that same page with you all the way from beginning to end, not just someplace in between. So that's a thought about that. And with the election, I totally agree. I think housing may have its moment again. It would be nice to have some level of infusion of support in student housing, an obvious one. It's been a long time since that's come up, but hey, hope springs eternal, right?
Yeah, and I might just jump off what Fran was saying there, that, you know, certainly we're looking to the federal government. They've identified international students as being primarily one of the tenant problems relative to housing. But they haven't really offered us any support to help to solve that problem or to create a solution. I would like to see more. I'm not optimistic, but I'd like to see something more very specific and dedicated towards helping us solve that problem in partnership with the federal government or devolve down through the provinces. The Housing Accelerator Fund really has been was a little bit of a golden moment for us partnering with our municipality, but it's entirely too slow to address the problem. We're just moving too slowly through all of the bureaucracy that's required for the municipality the small municipality where we're located, to be nimble enough to sort of address the housing challenge in a meaningful way in the short term. So that's my take. Is I'm not optimistic, but I do remain hopeful that the federal government, whichever government it is, will see fit to support us to help address this problem that they've identified. And like Charlie and others, we don't have the operational knowledge, nor do we have the funding to be able to develop on our own. But I would say the third leg on that stool is culturally as well. It hasn't been our ethos to develop. We are, as I said, a very old school and very traditional in approach, and it has not been our ethos or our culture to develop the property and the land that we have around us. And that's getting over that hurdle is a big piece of the challenge as well.
Fran, you talked about P3s in terms of kind of the risk and control and benefit of those. I want to throw it out to the rest of the panel. In terms of finding the right balance between risk and reward in your P3 relationships, how do you manage that? And realizing a lot of these housing projects are going to be 5+ years from the initial decision to the final completion. So that's a long-term relationship that you're forming here too.
I mean, I can start, I guess. So typically when we're entering into a P3 decision, when the decision's made that a P3 is the way we're going to develop a particular project, we start looking at the best way to identify a partner, and typically that's just an open procurement. The ones that we've sort of gone down the road on have been, as a result of an open procurement, so a public process where we invite, applicants to propose their, company profile, their level of expertise, their references, providing us with examples of some of the other ideally post-secondary projects that they've undertaken, and that really helps us get an idea of, where their areas of expertise are. And we found that, the partners that we've sort of worked with or at least evaluated all bring different really areas of expertise to the table. Some are, skilled in unlocking capital, some are skilled on the construction side, some are skilled on the operating side. And so you're never really going to find, at least in our sort of view, you're never really going to find a partner that is A++ in every single category. You're going to find some partners that are A++ in some categories and maybe a B in other categories. And so the balance really is on a case-by-case basis. When you're looking at whether it's a housing project or a commercial project, what are sort of the highest priority areas for the institution? And, through that public process, ideally, you can identify, which partners bring the right mix of expertise to the table, experience and expertise to the table to deliver that project the way you sort of envisioned when you started out. And so it's case by case. Like I said, there really isn't a part, at least to date, there really isn't a partner that is A++ across the board. But at the same time, we've had really, really great experiences and opportunities to view partners that are really talented across the board, and it's just about finding the right mix depending on the project you're working towards.
Perfect. Thank you,
Scott.
Charlie.
Maybe I would just quickly add, I think, be crystal clear in what it is you want to achieve. I mean, we all have the procurement process and so on, but be crystal clear on what it is you're trying to achieve. Stick to that over and over and over, go back to that touchstone. But at the end of the day, it is about values alignment as well. And, if you can find a partner that has that alignment with your values and and what you hold important as an institution. And one way to do that is, as the previous speaker in the previous session ended off saying, encouraging people just to pick up the phone and make a phone call, is that, you really have to develop a relationship with the potential partners to understand what their values are and whether they're true to them or not. And that might sound a little bit hokey, but there's a lot of money on the line, and as Fran pointed out, there's a big reputational risk to be taken as well. So we have to be clear on who we're partnering with and what their ultimate intentions are.
Yeah, and Scott, thanks for that, Ian, too, because it brings something else forward to me. It reminds me that, we do want to be we do want to leverage each other too, right? So it is the time to the good news stories, the good partnership stories. Like, I trust people who understand our industry. I trust everyone on the screen, people in the audience who are inside of education, that you could have a frank conversation prior to going to procurement, right? And say, look, here's what we're thinking of. You just finished your building. How did it work? What were your lessons learned? I think perhaps in some situations, gone to more of a virtual world, we don't bump into each other at particular conferences and things like that, where you're having a cup of coffee or sitting at a lunch and saying, oh my God, you just finished that. How did it go? Like, out of this real natural curiosity to benefit from each other, right? Because there's such value in that, to be able to speak candidly to your colleague and just sort of think about things before you open that procurement box.
We had a question come in. I'll jump in with a question. Scott, one of the audience members is asking if there's an interest in CMHC's student housing loan program to fund future student housing. The question is about CMHC specifically, and if there's interest from the panelists in the CMHC student housing loan program to finance future student housing.
We've gone down the road of CMHC on a couple of occasions. Like I said, it's in some cases, it's the only way to get the pro forma to work, is to unlock the advantages of CMHC financing. So yeah, we've gone down the road and we'll continue to go down that road.
Yeah, it's certainly an option for us as well. We're looking to build new residences, so definitely an option.
Yeah, nothing's off the table. Nothing.
There's another question that came in about the perception versus reality of welcoming international students to Canada. Does anybody here want to dispel the notion that international students are not welcome in Canada? In fact, they are welcome in Canada. So around the world, Canada's viewed as being closed. Is that true or not true? Is that perception and not the reality?
Well, if I'm clear on the question, I would say that international students are welcome in Canada. They're certainly welcome in Nova Scotia, and they're certainly welcome in Wolfville. But I think the perception by potential international students around the world is that they are not welcome. And that's certainly the anecdotal information that I'm getting back from our recruiters is as they're traveling around, that the message is that Canada's closed for business. And that students are not welcome here. So while they are welcome and needed and encouraged, they're not necessarily seeing it that way from the other side of the equation. At least that's my take.
I think Canada's historically been, sorry, Gabriel, Canada's historically been one of the top, desirable destinations for university and college study in the world, along with the United States and Australia and a couple of others. And I think, yeah, to Ian's point, there has been some notion, globally, that Canada may not be as welcoming as they thought it was. And so it's up to us as post-secondary institutions to, ensure that they understand that that's not necessarily the case, that Canada is open for business, like Ian had said, that we are a hospitable country, that we welcome international students with open arms. And I think that was probably more pronounced, over the course of the last 12 months until everything started happening in the United States. And now all of a sudden we're seeing, and this was kind of echoed earlier, students don't want to go to the United States because of the uncertainty, especially international students from, certain parts of the world. So they are starting to look at Canada again. So, the mistake, I shouldn't say mistakes, but some of the things that are happening in the United States may actually ultimately help dispel the notion that Canada may not be as hospitable as they thought it was.
Yeah, I think there was a real initial backlash. I'll say internationally, we had some recruiters and student fairs and stuff, and nobody would go to Canada. Like they were all going to other countries. That's changed now. I think the perception is getting better, but it's still a perception that we're not quite as open as we used to be. We are. I mean, we'll gladly accept international students. We have room for them, but that perception, that international reputation has taken a hit in the last 12, 16 months. 12 maybe.
Yeah, what a dance, right? Because we didn't come out and say, no one at this table came out and said, okay, we're going to limit this number, and hello, premiers, you get to figure out how each of your provinces is going to do that. Of course, that would send a particular message. I mean, it sent the same message to us. It's like, what we don't. So it is we're just dealing with that policy decision as the best we can, and I can totally appreciate what that looks like from outside media, the slant on that, how it gets reported. Was there any nuancing? What other countries get to say about us after that happened, to bring those students over to them. Like it's a complex beast. But I think the reality is that we also have to acknowledge that we did have a problem inside of, students living accommodations, perhaps some educational institutions not having the integrity to fulfill on their obligation to those students. Like the horror stories were tremendous. I'm in Toronto. That the things we heard and saw were things you're not proud of as someone who works for an institution, and that did have to get cleaned up someplace along the line. Was this the right way? Personally, I don't think so, but I do think that our recruiters have really worked hard to try and bring the discussion around, but it's like a global discussion too, right? Once your name is muddied, that just, what's that thing? Define yourself before others define you. Yeah, we're on the back foot of that one. And they are welcome. Then part of that question, they are welcome.
We have another question, very good question. Keep these coming in, audience members. What is the financial impact of the replacement of foreign student enrollment with the increase in domestic enrollment at lower tuition fees? And I think where that question, the direction that is going in is the increase in domestic enrollment covering the difference of losing international?
No.
Yeah,
The short, quick answer is no. Yeah, no, there's no way it'll offset everything.
Yeah, I agree with that on my end as well. I think there will be a little bump from kind of US joint citizens who have the opportunity to go to US or Canada. So I think there will be a small bump, but not to kind of meet the shortfall that we're seeing. Want to throw it out to the group as well. Thinking about growing deferred maintenance, especially in housing and academic buildings, how are your institutions managing this, and what kind of trade-offs are you facing in the near future? Realizing some of your residents and institutional buildings will not be new buildings, so they'll require additional deferred maintenance. Are you pushing that off down the road, or kind of doing what you need to do right now?
We're prioritizing on our side. So with our budget realignment and an effort to sort of lower the deficit to the extent that we can, we've had to push off some deferred maintenance projects. Obviously, the things that are classified sort of at a higher priority, so emergencies and deferred maintenance that we just can't push out, we're doing. But some of those nice to have projects are definitely being pushed out, and to the extent that we can extend the life of some of our other assets by not having to sort of undertake deferred maintenance, we're we're making those decisions now, you know, like I said, pushing them out a little bit, and I'm sure other institutions are in the same boat.
Yeah, deferred maintenance is a problem. We're doing as much as we can, but we've been able to do a bit more because of that increase in international students. But I mean, it's definitely a problem. Our university is 60 years old. Most of our buildings now are 50, 60 years old, so in a major cycle of renovation. So, I mean, deferred maintenance is definitely a problem.
Scott, another good question. Are the folks in the panel of their respective institutions lowering admission thresholds to attract more domestic students? So no, another question about relying now more on domestic students. Or admission thresholds being lowered?
No.
No, we haven't discussed that at all. That's never been part of the conversation.
No.
Just throwing out another question, beyond partnerships, are there any other kind of creative, non-traditional revenue strategies you're exploring, whether that's kind of IP, education, real estate, anything else that you're exploring as potential opportunities on the horizon?
We're always looking at ways to diversify our academic offering. I'm not the right person to speak to it, but you know, for example, our law school is looking at opportunities to provide, you know, more spots for international. We have an international program with the University of Detroit Mercy Law School, and so increasing some spots in that program, looking at some paralegal type certifications for law students. So from an academic perspective, that's one example. Course-based masters for which traditionally international students, looking at ways that we can offer those maybe for domestic students. In other words, you know, targeting domestic students as opposed to international students. We're working hard on expanding our real estate portfolio. So not just student housing, but as I mentioned earlier, commercial development, so retail, QSR, you know, anchored strips, maybe even hotels, that sort of thing on our excess land. And then identifying P3s or outsourcing, I guess you could say, for partnerships is probably a better word, for our ancillary operations, whether it's food, whether it's housing, whether it's parking. Like Fran had said earlier, everything has to be on the table, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you can do. Obviously, we have to respect our collective agreements. We have to respect, you know, other contractual obligations, but we, you know, we have to explore every option that comes forward. And so I always tell folks in the private sector that if they want to table something, I'll look at it. I'll look at everything. Doesn't necessarily mean I can do it, but I'm going to look at it and I'm going to explore it. And I think other institutions are doing the same things. You know, we have a cell tower on one of our residence buildings. That's not necessarily a revenue stream that, you know, some universities would have explored in the past, but you know, the cost of doing that, you know, seemed to be, you know, acceptable for the return that we would get from telco providers. So we're trying to sort of turn over the rocks and see what's under them and explore every opportunity that comes our way, and you know, to try to increase, you know, alternative revenues to the extent possible.
Yeah, the same for us. We're definitely looking at diversifying our revenue stream with loss of international students. We have quite a bit of land that's not developed. The university is sort of in the middle of the city, and we have a big piece of land that's not developed, which is probably the last big piece of land not developed in Moncton. So we're working with the city and try to get that to develop and getting a long-term plan, because we do want to save space for our needs, our future needs. We need some long-term planning on that, but we do need as well to work with the city. There's housing issues, there's retail opportunities. So we're all looking at those things. And, you know, if retraining is going to be something, well, our continuous education programs and everything else, are we there for the market for retraining? So those are our options as well for adding to revenue.
So we have about, Scott, about 10 minutes remaining. A couple additional questions came in from the audience. The one audience member is asking about uncertainty around Bill 185, to cut red tape to build more Homes Act. So uncertainty around Bill 185. Do you want to comment on that?
We're taking advantage of Bill 185 right now for a housing project that we're doing. It's a small scale housing project, but it's allowed us to speed up the development process. You know, it would have taken previously, you know, up to and over a year. Now we can do in a matter of a couple of months. We have a great relationship with our municipality, the city of Windsor, and so we let them know. Our process is to, we've kind of agreed to let them know when we intend to invoke our rights under Bill 185 and work with them, go through the permitting and approval process in the same manner, but we can do it on an expedited timeline. So we certainly are taking advantage of Bill 185. And frankly, I'd like to see more opportunities for public sector entities like you know, universities and colleges to have the opportunity, especially for housing, to be able to you know, increase the timeline or I guess speed up the timeline in a more efficient manner with some of these advantages, such as Bill 185, if you can do it in a responsible way. And I think that we are, you know, that's one of the things that we sort of set out at the outset, was if we're going to invoke Bill 185, we're going to do it the right way. Hopefully that builds a trust with, you know, the province and with the federal government that we can, you know, use those advantages the right way and do them for the right reasons.
Scott, I guess all I would say is that Bill 185 must be an Ontario piece of legislation, but what I would say here in Nova Scotia is, at least in Wolfville, we're very fortunate to have an excellent relationship with our municipal partners, and they have been very amenable to all conversations that we have brought forward that address all of these issues, whether it be housing, healthcare, long-term care, childcare, to help us be more entrepreneurial to try to address the deficit that we have and revenue.
Perfect. Just along those lines, we're 6 or 7 days away from the results of the federal election. Do you anticipate building and kind of the future of student housing to be much easier post-election? Any predictions if you had a crystal ball?
We'd be a different panel if we had a crystal ball, Scott.
Yeah.
Perhaps charging something, you know, who knows, for our big opinions. But I do think earlier, I think, Gabriel, you mentioned that perhaps that it's in everybody's platform. People are talking about it. I think there's a push on it. I think the discussion around international students did bring a large awareness to it, as well as just immigration in general. And so I do think it's a critical thing. Do I think it will get attention? Yes. How much attention? Not a clue.
Yeah, not sure it'll be easier, no matter who wins. I think, like I said, housing is there on the platforms, but will student housing be actually easier depending on who wins? I don't really think so, but I don't know. We'll see. My crystal ball is broken right now, so sorry, can't give you an answer.
There's another question on 185. Do you want to take that, or Scott?
I don't think I can see the questions, Brian.
Okay, so yeah, the question is, this is Ontario specific. Has Bill 185 initiatives included exemptions and development charges that have been shared in a P3 relationship? So let's repeat that. Have the Bill 185 initiatives included exemptions and development charges that have been shared in a P3 relationship?
To my knowledge, 185 does not necessarily result in exemptions to dev fees. Our university is in a development charge exclusion zone in our municipality, so when we're developing on our lands, we don't pay development fees anyways. I can't say for certain what the legislation speaks to when it comes to development charges. I don't believe it allows for waivers of development charges, but I would suspect that might differ from municipality to municipality.
Yeah, I can't speak to it, Scott, sorry.
No, that's great. Just throwing it out to the panel, realizing we only have a few minutes left. Are there any final thoughts in terms of kind of the real world impacts, finances and opportunities? We talked about alternative revenue generation. Any final thoughts?
One thing that I think we failed to talk about with respect to the international student cap and what that means in the real world impact from a financial perspective and impact on housing and so on is, at least in Atlantic Canada, we really need immigration to develop our economy. We were up until a few years ago, the Atlantic provinces was seeing a net decline in overall population. The population was aging and birth rates are dropping. So it's really been a huge boost to our economy to have the skilled workforce coming into our population here, and we need that to sustain our economy going forward. And I think it's been completely overlooked, the value and the importance that universities can play in that, in facilitating that.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Gabriel.
On a way.
I echo what Ian says. Even in Ontario, we're desperately needed. Our college colleagues are provide a valuable service inside of those international students and the pipelines that they fill for us, especially when we're talking about perhaps more trades, more growth needed, and more support for those. I don't know where people think that's going to come from if we don't bring back our international students in a fulsome way to be able to be the engineers and project managers and tradespeople on those things. And in closing, I would just say that in the real world, it's nimble like we've never been nimble before. Well, no, maybe we did go through COVID. So nimble, much like we had to be through COVID, to be aware of what the changes are and the impact is. And it's just not linear. Period, full stop.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Ian. In New Brunswick, it's been the same thing. The international students have been a really great boon to the economy. All the population increase in New Brunswick has been immigration. It's not a demographic internal boom, so it's all immigration. For us, it's a language issue as well. I mean, helping stabilize the decline of French in New Brunswick, so having all these international students provide services in languages and everything. So it's not something to. It's a big impact. In New Brunswick, it's been a big impact for us and for our smaller communities, Edmundston and Chipagan, where two of our campuses are in really small French-speaking regions. It's been an important impact in those regions.
Well,
coming up on 10 o'clock, Scott Johnston from the Victoria University of Toronto. Scott, any final thoughts or observations from you?
No, I would just echo what the panelists have been saying. I think we're in for kind of a paradigm shift in terms of the near future. And I think it'll be a new story kind of at the end of this month. And what that looks like, I think we'll have a much better idea in terms of immigration and student enrollment. But I know I would echo what everyone said. We really need those students to support future development and growth, especially even in Toronto. So thank you to all the panelists today. I think we've had some amazing discussion, and I hope it's been of value to those watching us today.
The SHURE initiative is the premier 501c3 association for higher education planners and private sector real estate developers. While our application for 501c3 exempt status is pending with the IRS in the United States, we assert our eligibility under Section 501A. From the start, the SHURE initiative has focused on creating exceptional content, impactful research, and powerful events for university planners and private sector student housing executives who want to break from the status quo. Our mission is to enhance student lives and transform university neighborhoods. Our actively engaged members embody our commitment to excellence. By supporting the SHURE initiative, you help to build stronger housing environments for students and improve campus living conditions. We strive to make our university settings exceptional for faculty, staff, students, and the surrounding communities. Thank you for watching the Student Housing and University Real Estate Initiative.